told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. Glad I was right.
You've spoken previously about having a sort of complicated relationship with martial arts action movies and roles personally. And obviously Shang-Chi is there's so much of that in it in such a beautiful and unique way, particularly in action films in general. Now that it's completed and you've kind of done this whole project, how have those feelings evolved or changed for you?
Well, so what you're alluding to is, I think, every Asian person growing up has a complex feeling with martial arts. On the one hand, I think it's very empowering to watch, Jackie Chan movies and Bruce Lee movies. I mean, those are very, very awesome, badass, butt-kicking heroes that, that are aspirational. But on the other hand, in a way, a lot of those stories were told outside of an Asian gaze. Like, they were told with a predominantly white perspective and didn't really give us the kind of authentic representation that I think we craved, and that certainly that I craved as an Asian Canadian kid growing up in Toronto and speaking predominantly English. And there was a tendency sometimes to stereotype martial artists, or Asian martial artists, and so what I think we've done with this movie is we've kind of reclaimed that. Martial arts certainly does play an important part of the story that we and the world that we inhabit, but it also is done in a way that empowers our characters and deepens them rather than cheapens and stereotypes. So we have the martial arts, we have the fights and the eye-popping, jaw-dropping action, but we also have these really, really intense character moments, these dramatic beats with myself and the incredible Tony Leung. We have moments of lighthearted comedy between myself and Awkwafina. I mean, there's just a lot in this movie, and it contributes to the dimensionality of the characters, which is really why it's martial arts, but in an empowering way.
One of my favorite things about Katie was, like, she's the normal person kind of dropped into this crazy situation, but at the same time, she's also dealing with reckoning with legacy as the daughter of immigrants, dealing with, like, how do you figure out who you are and also do right by your parents. As an child of immigrants myself, I could really relate to that. And I wondered for you, how much of that was on the page there for you to kind of dive into, and how much of that did you bring to that character?
I mean, I think a lot of it was on the page, and it was maybe a combination of both, because, I think Destin came to see me a couple of days after we started doing Katie, and he was just like, you have to realize that Katie has a lot of things that she regrets too. Like, there's a lot of things that, she has pressure from the world. She has pressure from her parents. She has pressure from who she is as an American, who she is as the daughter of immigrants, right? So it's a lot of things that play. And I think that's why her friendship with Shang-Chi is very special. I think that along his journey, she finds out a lot about herself and that the world is bigger. And so I think that's really all it's about at the end of the day.
One of the things that I really I found quite moving and surprising in this film was how much it deals with themes of kind of grief and legacy and family in a real concrete way. And I wondered how did you pick those themes to explore, even though you're also doing a superhero movie? Like, they seem antithetical in a way, but they aren't, and it works. And I was wondering how you kind of came up with that.
Well, that actually it started from the comics. The core relationship in the comics is a pretty complex relationship between a father and son. And we wanted to expand on that theme and see how all of these characters are shattered and pushed away from each other because of a tragedy, and watching each of them deal with that tragedy and that pain of their past was a theme that just kind of kept recurring as during the writing process. And to me, that became the heart of the story, was watching a superhero who steps into his superpower by dealing with the pain that he has had, that he has been running from his entire life. And the moment that he is able to finally look at that pain and redefine it and realize that pain is the source of his strength, it was something that I really related to.
the connection to particularly the mother side of martial arts. That's a very intimate and powerful moment when he sort of changes his physicality in that moment. I felt like that was a real evolution for the character. It was very moving to see that.
I loved learning all of the different styles in the movie, and I think the one that you're referring to is just so beautiful. I mean, one of the first fights in our movie is like a dance, you know?
Right.
It's like watching poetry. I think it's, you know, it's action, but it's also just like a beautiful visual. And I think really this movie is just going to grab our audience. And I think what you were kind of just saying is you know, the action serves a purpose in the story.
Right.
It really drives the story forward. It enhances the storytelling instead of just being like, all right, we're in another action sequence. This is a break. This is now they're fighting, and now they're fighting again. It's like they're really like different. It's like different songs in an album. You know, it's like a musical in a way.
Yeah.
Like this, and each song has its own flavor, has its own spirit.
Also, there's the element of the archery. Like, did you learn that? Was that you? How much was like stunt? Like, what was that experience like for you also doing that?
Yeah, I mean, everything in the Marvel universe that you're gonna do, even just in a scene, you're gonna have some kind of training for, or at least that was my experience. So when it came to archery and driving, yeah, that was like, it's like I can't say that I had I was like physically up there with all the other people that were doing stunts at that level, but yeah, it was really fun to just be to do all that. Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation around representation, obviously, and this being kind of a watershed moment for cinema, but also for the MCU on a kind of micro scale and then macro in cinema. How much of that was part of your approach to making the film? Because I'm always curious, I've talked with different creative people about representation and whether it factors into their creative process or not. And everyone has a different answer. So I wanted to know, how was that for you? What did you feel that was a burden that you were taking with you, or something else?
I mean, I don't think representation is ever a burden. I love making movies that reflect the world around me. I grew up in Hawaii, surrounded by such a huge array of ethnic background, and all of my friends were Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Hawaiian, Caucasian, and all of those cultures mixed together in my upbringing. All of those foods were all spread out on the same dinner table, and that's the world that I am used to. And so to be able to try to have that type of diversity in every movie that I make is something that I kind of naturally gravitate toward.
And I was wondering, obviously you've got that kind of story on the one side, but then on the other side, you have the fact that this is a Marvel film and you have to fit it into all of the greater continuity of the MCU. Was there anything in particular that you had to include that was sort of like in the contract, was like must reference XYZ?
No, Marvel doesn't really work like that. Everything is a conversation, and at the creative process is actually pretty open, and it's always evolving. So and we all wanted this movie to be integrated into the MCU. I think it would be a disservice to all of these characters if it was just a standalone film.
Right.
We want to imagine at the end of this movie which other characters they'll be interacting with in future movies and what storylines they'll be following. And so we all wanted the same thing. And as we're going forward, you know, then right now Marvel Studios has so many storylines moving forward that as you're writing and watching the new things that are coming out, you get new ideas. What about this? What if we tried this? What if we introduced this character? So that part of the process is really fun.
We're hoping this is not the last we see of Shang-Chi in the MCU. What is your kind of, do you know much about the future for your character?
Absolutely nothing.
You know
Absolutely
nothing.
zero has been told to me. I'm the new kid, you know. They don't give you like level 6 clearance. Like, I just imagine myself going deeper and deeper into a tunnel, you know, like down the elevator, and I'm in like sector 2. And then, you know, if I try to go to sector 3, they're like, you're not authorized. But, you know, hopefully as I go on, I'll get more.
Man, I have no idea what we can expect in the future. I think just the mind is kind of left to wonder after you know, when you watch the movie. But I will say that I would like to see her not without Shang-Chi. I think that their friendship and is really important for each of them individually. Yeah.
Mhm.